And welcome to Let 'Em Talk. I'm Paul DiRienzo. We have another great show in store for you. And our guest is Connor Voss, and he is a spokesperson and representative of the Uhuru movement. And he turned me on to this really cool button so I can wear it for you guys. And it says...
Looks good.
Yeah, it does. It says, what does it say again? I didn't even
Reparations now.
Reparations now.
Yeah, and there's a little picture of Africa.
Right, as there should be. And you're wearing the other button, which is another beautiful picture of Africa.
Yes, Black Power Blueprint, another one of our main campaigns of the Uhuru movement.
Okay, the Uhuru movement. And tell us, what does Uhuru mean?
Uhuru is a Swahili word. It means, which is an African language, and it means freedom. And it comes from, or its significance politically and culturally comes from the Kenyan Land and Freedom Army, which was led by Dedan Kimathi and pushed back British colonialism from the area known and carved up as Kenya. And those people were also called the Mau Mau, so some people may be familiar with that. But Uhuru, as I said, means freedom, and it was adopted by a number of organizing groups in the south of the U.S. during the Black Revolution of the 60s, including the junta of militant organizations, JOMO, which then was one of the founding organizations of the African People's Socialist Party, which leads the Uhuru movement internationally now. So that's the lineage of that word. And for those of us who are part of the Solidarity movement, who are white people, Europeans, not African, we use the term Uhuru as well as a term of greeting or celebration.
Aren't ultimately all of us African?
I mean, if you go back far enough, but yeah, there's been some interruptions since then that have sort of divided people, that are significant to acknowledge.
Right,
that make a lot of us not African.
Right. So it's important. So it's important for your movement that you're fighting for an African identity here in the United States, in a sense.
Yeah, that's very insightful. The understanding of the African People's Socialist Party is that all Black people around the world are African people. And regardless of where they've been dispersed by European colonialism and imperialist domination, regardless of how they've been carved up for the plunder of their resources and African land, they are African, and they share a relationship to an African homeland, a sense of sameness, a sense of, national identity. And even, Black people living inside the U.S. are colonized African people within the borders of a settler colony here. So those are the understandings of the movement.
A settler colony. So you see the United States less as sort of this great democratic republic, and more as in the guise of a settler republic, in the sense of in the guise of that is basically another colonial country, like South Africa or someplace like that.
Yeah, and I think that's important to say because right now we're seeing a lot of people talk about settler colonies or colonies as if there's something that happened only in the past. The initial colonies when Europeans came here and began, massacring the indigenous people and setting up these military outposts and trading outposts. That's in the past, but it's just expanded, and the process has been the same for the past 600 years. And we can look at, other colonies around, whether it's Australia or Israel or these other European colonies, and I think it's important to draw back the attention back to we here in the United States are living on stolen indigenous land. The Lenape people who lived in the New York and Pennsylvania area for thousands and thousands of years some of them still live here, have been forced to assimilate, but the rest live on concentration camps called reservations out in Oklahoma. They've been so separated and attacked from their culture. So anyway, that's a really important thing that I think has to be embraced and internalized by white people.
So I should say, in that context, what do you think of Donald Trump? He represents orange.
Yeah, he's not
orange color.
Yeah, we talk a lot about how white power takes many forms, and oftentimes it even recruits Africans or indigenous people to play roles as white power with a black face or white power with a brown face. We joke that Donald Trump is white power with an orange face. But I think the critical thing about Donald Trump that we should, a lot of people are, focusing heavily on Donald Trump, and I'm sure you may have had this conversation with many people as well. Donald Trump is not someone that we appreciate in any way. But if the conversation starts and stops with Donald Trump, we really neglect looking at the whole history of colonialism, white power imperialism that produced someone like Donald Trump in the first place. And Donald Trump just represents sort of the next step in this deepening crisis where white people and white society, which has been built for hundreds of years on the stolen labor and lives and culture and creativity and intellect of Africans and indigenous, the land of indigenous people and Aboriginal people, I mean, everywhere around the world, Vietnamese, South Asian people, is now facing, a reckoning as those people reclaim their power, as Africans become more powerful, become more organized, and are really able to win.
In just our lifetimes, Africa's changed a lot. It's not quite the Biafran starving children. I mean, there's still elements of that, but it's becoming a much more modern. The cities are looking like China, building big cities with big, tall buildings, and it's not what President Trump called, pretty much all the third world countries.
Yeah.
When he called them S-hole countries, right? And I'll spare you saying it, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what he said, right? And so what? A lot of one of the interesting things that have come out in this whole period now, in the electioneering going on, is the woman who's running for president against Trump, Elizabeth Warren, who made a big point of saying she was Cherokee.
Yes, I'm familiar with that.
What do you think of that? I mean, she got in a lot of heat for that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people say in America, like they say, like 1 out of 10 Americans claims that they're part Cherokee through some. Are they really? I mean, that caused a big stir, didn't it?
Well, I think there's a lot more to. I think one of the things that's important to recognize, there's a lot more to national identity than just your blood relations. And if you look at Elizabeth Warren's voting record and her participation in certain political campaigns, her actions do not reflect a unity with the sovereignty of indigenous people. She does not have any real ties to those communities, and her behavior doesn't reflect the empowerment of indigenous people. So indigenous people were, and I think, and that's who I look to for leadership on that question of who claims indigenous identity and how do they move with it. And this identity politics question is really big right now of who gets to say what and who gets to talk about what. But I mean, I would turn and look to indigenous people to decide, is this person a representative of the indigenous population?
Right.
And overwhelmingly, the response was no. Elizabeth Warren does not represent us.
Right. It's just a thing that people have been saying forever in America, and everybody takes it with a grain of salt, and it's a joke.
I'm a 64th person,
Right.
Cherokee.
It's ridiculous.
It's basically a way of liquidating white identity. It's a way of saying I'm not really white, or I don't have to take responsibility for what Europe has done.
Guilt.
Oh yeah.
It's like a lot of guilt, right? I want to, I'm not proud of who I am. I got to say I'm somebody else.
Well, it's evasion. It's evading, and this is something that the Uhuru.
Well, what about white power? What do you think? Because the reason I say that is because I've heard from racist people, right, a lot in this Trump era. Well, you have black power, you have Asian power, you have women power. Why can't you have white power?
There's a few things I want to say, but before we go any further, I do want to lay out a few things about...
Right. Yes, no, so you're saying that basically it would take 20 minutes of the rest of the show to answer my question, right?
Well, one thing that I think is really critical, when there's a white person here talking about this sort of stuff and representing the Uhuru movement, it's a black liberation movement, I want to say that I represent the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, which is an organization of predominantly white people that operates under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. Right. So we're not a sovereign group of white people that came together to do charity work. Right. We were organized as part of a black liberation strategy. And that's how we operate. We give accounts of our work all the time. We report on our work. And the ideas that I'm putting forward here in this conversation with you and that I do in my life and do as an organizer are not ideas that I developed or I came up with as a white person. In fact, I think I recognize, and white people can recognize as well, that we are not the authorities on the black liberation struggle. We don't lead the African liberation struggle. We don't lead the indigenous liberation struggle. And that's an important political statement to make. So the things that I'm sharing about imperialism and colonialism when I'm organizing with the Solidarity Movement stem directly from particularly Omali Yeshitela, the chairman of the African People's Socialist Party, who has developed the theory of African internationalism that guides the work of the party and our work as the Solidarity Movement. And that I, am under his leadership and leadership of the party. So I did want to say that.
Great. I'm glad you did. I wanted to draw that out of you. Great.
Yeah.
And so now let's talk about the reason why you're here. Now we know who you are.
Okay.
And what you're doing here.
Yeah.
Show us what we're talking about. You talk about blood diamonds, right?
Yes. This is our current
and you have a literature
campaign.
there, right? We can show the literature. Bring a few of those over.
Yeah.
So
here, you can have one. We got
great.
different
And here's the
sizes.
poster here. All diamonds are blood diamonds. We can hold this right up for everybody to see. And I'm going to read. It says, reparations now, Africa's resources in African hands. And this is Sunday, February 24th, Uhuru Solidarity Center, which is, it's going to be at Teresa's Gallery, Teresa Burns' Gallery, TBG, 616 East 9th Street. That's between Avenue B and Avenue C on East 9th in the Lower East Side, the East Village, they call it, some people. And which is an appropriation of itself. I've been calling it the East Village when it was the Lower East Side for hundreds of years. A call to action for white people to return diamonds and other stolen resources. And the speakers are, who are these people who are speaking?
Okay, the keynote speaker is going to be YEJIDE ORUNMILA, who is the president of the African National Women's Organization. She's based in Washington, D.C. and leads it's a component of the Uhuru movement. And it's an international organization of African women leaders, and they just consolidated a branch in Cameroon. So that's really powerful. She's an amazing presenter. She's spoken at some of our events here in the past, and has spoken around the region and around the world on the topic of the colonial oppression of African women. And the other presenter will be my direct leadership chairwoman of the African People's Solidarity Committee, Penny HESS, who wrote the initial pamphlet 10 years ago, All Diamonds Are Blood Diamonds, which investigated the idea of blood diamonds and basically exposed the contradiction that there's not some good diamonds that De Beers tells you are, conflict-free and, are like, organic diamonds or something like that. That the entire diamond trade was invented.
It took me a second to get that one. Organic diamonds. I have it with my organic latte too.
Yeah. Well, the diamond trade, like many mineral and coffee and these other trades, were formed out of a colonial domination. Cecil Rhodes founded the diamond trade. He was a colonizer. He established Rhodesia. He also established the De Beers Diamond Mining Company, and that. All diamonds, whether they're mined in Canada or Russia or most of them are mined in Africa. But even within Africa, whether they're mined in some conflict-ridden area or they're mined in some there's no part of Africa that's untouched by colonialism. And so all the diamonds and the whole diamond trade, diamonds you can find them you used to be able to just find them on the ground in Africa.
Right.
They have the value is completely created by these companies, these corporations that control the market very tightly. And basically, in the case of blood diamonds and conflict-free or certified diamonds, the diamond mining companies wanted to prevent the influx of diamonds from certain regions of Africa. And so they labeled diamonds coming from those areas as conflict diamonds and developed their own special certification process. So anyway. Yeah.
Right, I get it. It's very interesting. And so, people wear diamonds all the time. Women, of course, love their engagement ring, and we have the song "Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend."
Diamonds are forever.
Right. And guys now wear them. They wear diamond earrings. Women wear diamond earrings. They wear diamond stick pins in the old days. Even today, now people are wearing diamond studs stuck in their face everywhere you can have them.
Yeah.
They're everywhere.
Yeah, and that's what makes diamonds such an interesting, I think, important campaign for us to wage, because clearly there's many things, whether it's coltan from the Congo that makes the batteries in our computers and our cell phones and our technology.
What's coltan again?
Coltan's a mineral that's also mined from the ground. It can be very toxic to the people mining it, so it's a great hazard to the Africans who are forced to work to mine it. The conditions of mining, whether it's coltan or diamonds in Africa, are absolutely they're disgusting, they're terrible, and there's been some videos that have come out. You know, we live in the internet age, so people are sharing videos of what it looks like to work in those conditions.
And
there's some pictures here what you have on the flyer.
So they're in my phone. My phone contains
Africa in your phone.
Africa in my phone, the minerals of Africa, right? And we were talking earlier, because I'm reading this book, I won't spend long on it, but the uranium that was used to make the atomic bombs that were dropped in Hiroshima and Nagasaki actually came from the Congo, Katanga region of the Congo. Here's a map of the Congo. I don't know if you see it.
Yeah.
There's a little light in here, but maybe we can see it this way. And so this is a long history.
Yeah.
And Belgium controlled the Congo and
King
had one of the
Leopold,
most
Belgium.
repressive colonial experiences in history.
Oh yeah, cut off hundreds of thousands of people's hands. They still sell chocolate hands in Belgium as a special treat, and that practice of chocolate hands comes from the piles of hands of Africans who were colonized and exploited and tortured by the Belgian government.
To force them to, if they rebelled, which everybody rebels, of course.
Of course, resistance has been part of the, I mean, I think that's important to state too. You know, as we talk about the incredible, the colonial violence that has been waged against African people in the continent of Africa and inside this country through the through the prison system. To this day, it's an ongoing, colonial domination that exists. There has been resistance the entire time. The movements, whether it's the Mau Mau resistance that claimed the term Uhuru as their war cry, or it's the Black Panther movement in the 60s and 70s here, or the movements like the Uhuru movement today, the resistance has been powerful, and often it's eliminated from our history books. We don't study it in school.
That's for sure.
But it's so important that we uphold that and we recognize that these movements are powerful. They're growing.
I grew up as a child in elementary school and into junior high during the exact period when Africa was decolonizing and these struggles were first happening. I knew nothing of it.
Wow.
It was many years later that I learned about it.
Oh, it's still, yeah.
It was never talked about. The teachers never mentioned it. I had no idea what was going on. And they didn't tell us about Vietnam either until we got a draft notice.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, people a little older than me, but anyway.
Yeah.
So that is a problem with our education system. So tell us. So what are you asking people to do about blood diet? Are you saying that people that quote unquote girls should get rid of their best friends? Take something else, some other stone, maybe a more closer to home stone, turquoise, maybe something like that.
Well, the call to action is for reparations. It's for returning, and that means returning the wealth that's been taken from Africa and African people back to the African community so that they can build their lives and their future. Because as these minerals are being pulled out of the ground and sold, as coltan fills the coffers of Steve Jobs and these tech companies, African people are still suffering incredible poverty because they don't control their own resources. They don't benefit from the value of those things. So reparations is a call for white people who do benefit from colonialism. We're here because of the removal of the indigenous people. We're here because of African labor. To not say, oh, I want to take an unlearning racism workshop, or oh, I want to change the thoughts in my heads and then leave a workshop, and the conditions that black people face in this country and around the world are completely the same.
Right. And we're familiar with all the conniptions that middle-class white people go through to try and prove they're okay.
Yes. So what we're saying is, we're white. We can acknowledge that. We don't want to shy away from that and act like we're guilty and try to deflect. We want to look at it head on. It's a violent, bloody history. It's still going on today. We benefit from it in ways that we can't even fathom. But we can join with the liberation struggle of oppressed peoples around the world.
Sure.
And part of the way we do that is not, we certainly want to show up. We want to put our energy into it. We want to be there. We want to support it in words. But we want to release the hordes of wealth that are held in the white community back into the hands of the people that can really lead the world struggle to overturn this social economic system.
Well, you've been following, and I know you're way beyond and above this, but this Green New Deal where they're saying it's time to raise like the upper class taxes to like 70, 80, 90%, which it existed before, back, and start putting that money back into communities and things like that. Is that enough in your mind?
I don't know that much and have not studied that much about the Green New Deal, as it's called. But short of the complete return of the wealth that's been stolen from African people, that's not satisfactory. I don't think it's satisfactory to the African people that are suffering in these mines and in the various conditions that they face around the world. And I don't think it should be enough to us as white people either. We have to take a stand that, there are steps, short reforms that can have, short-term effects. But in the long run, many of those reforms are aiming to actually perfect a system that continues to dominate, black people and indigenous people. And we oppose that completely. We want all the resources of Africa, everything that's been taken has been estimated at like $13.2 trillion. That's the whole GDP of the U.S. economy, which makes sense given how the economy was created. But, it's not going to happen tomorrow.
Right.
But that is what the Uhuru movement's building.
I mean, it's a revolutionary thing to reverse 400 years of enslavement and this theft of people's wealth.
Yeah.
To turn that around and to start pouring that money back into Africa for redevelopment projects. A lot could be done. The U.S. could begin now a process. We spent $1 trillion on all these stupid wars for the last 20 years, right? Wasting it, burning the money, getting people killed for no reason, making enemies out of half the world. When America could have taken that $1.5 trillion as a down payment on this $13.5 trillion.
Well, it's not just that
dams, we could have done development, whatever is necessary, cleaned up messes, built toilets, put in sewer systems, all the things necessary that Africa needs.
Well, you raise an important point because while it would be awesome if the U.S. government paid reparations at that level, would really return everything. But we also understand that America and this country and the economy of this country is built on that theft. The theft of the labor of African people, the turning of African people into commodities for trade on the global market was the development of capitalism as a global modern system. And so we don't expect, we're not waiting for that to happen. We're not waiting for the U.S. government to suddenly start contributing to a revolutionary process that will basically remove its ability to control Africa, control the indigenous people. So what we do is especially in the Solidarity movement, we organize just normal white people like me. There's nothing that interesting or specific about me, Connor, but I really believe and unite with this strategy of reparations and with the strategy of black liberation.
So how's it going to come? Through revolution?
It's a revolutionary process.
That's a revolution is, there's either the revolutionary new automobiles offered by the Ford Motor Company or there's the revolution that picks up arms and overthrows the government.
Yeah, well, the steps, this is an economic process. We build, the Black Power Blueprint is a project in St. Louis, Missouri, where there was a huge uprising in Ferguson after the colonial murder of Mike Brown in 2014. Yeah. And, after the uprising, there was a huge growth of the party presence, African People's Socialist Party, and there's been this multi-stage project that's now in the third and final stage to build a community center, housing, a workforce development program, agriculture, vegetable garden, marketplace, just this whole community economic development project. That is the revolution. The revolution is building the ability, African people, on their own terms, building their capacity to feed, clothe, and house themselves. And as white people, we pay reparations to those projects so that the wealth is not, so that African people are not held up by not having access to their own resources, to their own ability to build. So that's our main role in this work.
Beautiful. So this is a growing movement, and it comes out of things like the Mike Brown, like the murder.
It's growing very, very fast.
Hands up, right? That was the hands up, right? I have folks who were involved.
It wasn't hands up, don't shoot initially, actually.
Oh, no.
The protests, were kind of, I don't know, I feel sidetracked in many ways by the hands up, don't shoot.
Oh, really?
In the case of Mike Brown, it was poor, working class black people in Ferguson, which is, I've now been to St. Louis to visit the Black Power Blueprint. I have the honor of seeing the work being done there, and it is so impoverished. There's this Delmar Divide, Delmar Boulevard. If you live on the north side of St. Louis, it just looks like a bomb hit it. It's third world conditions that the black community lives in, and then on the south side is the white community, all these nice houses, because there's economic development there. But you know, the rallying cry when Mike Brown was murdered was, you know, kill the police. It was get these pigs out of our hood. Get this occupying military presence out of the black community.
Oh, I see. And they sort of softened it for public, like later on. Like
oh, imagine that, yeah.
Yeah, right. They softened it up, right? But people were angry.
People were very angry.
Right. We had folks here. I had some of the video people who, because you know, there was a Ramsey Ordo who videotaped Eric Garner being choked to death. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. He came here right before they took him away to jail. He actually, because of his good work, his reward was 4 years in prison.
Oh, of course. I mean, you.
Right, and which I'm sure as soon as he gets out in a year or two, we're going to have him back on. And the people are supporting him, and he gets a lot of support in prison, believe me,
wow.
For the great work he did. And the courage it took for him to stand up there and to film his that officer Pantaleo murdering him, his friend. And then because of that, it was right before he went to jail. The folks happened to be here from Baltimore, from Ferguson, from New York, and various places where there had been rebellions at that time, and came on the show, and we played the video, and everybody talked about their experience taking these shots and what had happened to the people, and what they thought about video and all that kind of thing. So it's very interesting. I'm glad we're coming sort of full circle now. Yeah. So let's tell people about this, the last couple of minutes.
Yes, great. So this is going to be on Sunday, February 24th. It's part of a worldwide tour that's going to feature different speakers in different parts of the world and parts of the U.S. But it will be first coming to the Northeast region. It'll be starting in Boston, and the second event is going to be here in New York City at TBG, which is going to be a part-time Solidarity Center. We've been meeting there and organizing out of this space. Right. So I just want to appreciate Teresa Burns' gallery for offering us this venue. So it's going to be great.
It's Sunday, February 24th, so it's coming up.
It's at 7 p.m.
At the Uhuru Solidarity Center at TBG, Teresa Burns Gallery, 616 East 9th Street in New York City, and that's on East 9th Street, just east of Avenue B, in the middle of the block between Avenue B and Avenue C, right before you get to La Plaza Cultural, and you can get there on the L train or the F train, which stops over on Houston Street, and just walk over, and it's a great place. It's really a cool place. Teresa's been on the show. We got 20 seconds left. Anything you'd like to add?
I just want to appreciate the opportunity to be here. Paul, thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Teresa, for making this connection. And I really look forward to seeing people who saw this program attend the event, learn more, get involved. You can go to uhurusolidarity.org to learn more. And Uhuru.
Thank you.